Have you ever felt a cool breeze caress your face while walking through a shaded tree-lined lane? The crunch of fallen leaves underneath your feet, finding a moment of peace in the insanity of a city bursting with heat, fumes and noise. Isn't it a wonderful feeling, like finding an oasis in this madness? And perhaps, right after that little walk in the shade, have you also ever felt the soft, almost imperceptible plop of something warm, squishy, gooey, arrive like a whisper on your shoulder, then drip down your arm and elbow, crawling its way right onto your very skin itself? Oh yes, shit happens. Specifically, bird shit happens. More specifically, to me. My relationship with crow shit, alias bird poop, that familiar, sometimes fragrant, white and green concoction of avian excesses. It goes back a long while. The shaded little park in the colony where I grew up, riding high on the playground swings as a boundlessly energetic 5-year-old, was where I have the memory of my very first blessings from above. The thing with bird poop is, once a feathered beast has marked you, it leaves a little invisible bullseye on your head forever. A few years ago, scientists showed that bees can remember individual human faces. And this is true, so antagonize a bee at your own risk. Given my experiences with the species, I am pretty sure by now that the same thing applies to crows. Maybe they can chemically detect a favorite target and choose to re-bless it. Remember where you first heard this. Years from now, when some grad student study shows that seagulls can recall and differentiate between various colognes or deodorants. Whatever the reason happens to be, there's a frequency and accuracy that I'm susceptible to that's deeper, truer, and more persistent than the average person. So much like Vodafone's Little Pug and their unmatched network, bird shit has followed me with fidelity wherever I have gone. Let's start with school. What's a good gossip session with high school friends up on the spectators' gallery on the basketball court, if not spiced up with feces on one of our heads? Not one of our heads. My head. Well, thankfully this was a ritual. A good dunking at the water cooler could usually solve. But oh, those days were so special. After I left the comfortable confines of my hometown for college, bird shit played an important role in my life. It ensured that familiar scents paid me the occasional visit whenever I felt homesick. What would be a good cup of cutting chai at the college canteen without a pigeon drizzling its crap precisely into your paper cup from the tangled confines of the banyan tree above? The beautiful contrast of green, brown, white on the black t-shirts that I like to sport at college always added that bit of flashy pizzazz to the otherwise drab colors I usually rolled out of bed in. Did I learn my lesson early? Yes, of course I did. Did I ever dress up for class? No, of course I did not. Despite all of these experiences and run-ins with birds, the true power and stench of these rare bombs became fully apparent to me only when I first walked the hallowed portals of the Indian Institute of Management in Calcutta. In my 2 years there, I'm proud to say, I was pooped on a total of 19 times. Yes, 19 times. Birds there have had the pleasure of defecating on some of the brightest and most brain-stuffed heads in this country. The legend around the campus goes that if a bird poops on you when you're on your way to a job interview, typically dressed in a dark, well-cut business suit, you have a sure shot at getting that job. But let's be honest here, These guys have been conning the nation for the last 50 years. The truth is, this institute is not a management school. It is actually a bird sanctuary, which basically means that it exclusively serves as a very large toilet that should be run by the wildlife services and not by academics. The only matters of substance there are fecal matters. I know it, you know it, and now the Indian people know it. So yes, a few years after I finished college, I moved to Bombay. One fine, hot and humid Saturday morning, I was in an auto rickshaw at its top speed of 40 kilometers an hour, tearing down Juhu Tara Road past the Marriott Hotel, right before it takes that big turn near the beach. I was the lone occupant at the back that morning, slowly and like in commercial, flipping my head side to side in a bit to blow dry my newly shampooed hair. No. I really like the effect that blow dryers have on hair, but I'm too much of a screw to invest in one. I was suitably hungover that morning, a little green at the gills, from a wonderful Friday night's musical soiree turned drunken screaming session that I had been privy to, more likely participated in, more likely incited. To cap out my state, I had had no breakfast in me that morning. I directed the rickshaw towards Turner Road in Bandra. A very dear friend of mine, out of the goodness of his heart, had invited me over to his apartment for work and for lunch. This friend lives in an easily locatable building above a well-known coffee shop on Turner Road. I had been to this apartment before, quite a number of times in fact, and locating this should have been par for the course. But if I had a better sense of direction when hungover, after multiple calisthenics with various varieties of alcohol, we wouldn't have a story today. I asked the rickshaw to stop the moment he reached Turner Road. He had never heard of the aforementioned well-known coffee shop, and I was of the opinion that I was better equipped to just walk down the street and find the building myself, and then go up and down, clocking tens of rupees on the meter, Scrooge as I had previously mentioned. So I walked down the road, low-hanging backpack on my back, aviator sunglasses reflecting 10 a.m. sunlight, and feet shod in Crocs, treading the red-tiled footpaths of Bandra West in search of my destination. I looked suitably hipsterish, of course I did. After a few minutes of walking, I had reached the end of that section of the road, the well-known coffee shop, still not in sight. I decided it was time to ask a few of the security guards strewn around if they had a better idea than me of where this place might be. For a supposed landmark, this well-known coffee shop and my friend's building were completely unknown to all of the people I badgered with my questions that morning. I walked for 30 minutes, back and forth, from one end to the other, and in the process, achieved a rare feat that morning. I had managed to get lost on the straight and narrow Turner Road, which any one of you familiar with the place will surely deem impossible. Now, in this moment of utter despair and underneath a blazing Mumbai sun, one of my faithful friends from above spied the bullseye that was my head. Although I didn't have any breakfast in me that morning, apparently he did. And so, with deadly aim, it dropped a load from about 10 meters to a loud splat on my ultra-shiny and extra silky head of hair. Yes, I stood on the side of the road as the particularly horrid greenish-wise ooze slowly melted into flatness, covering a few hundred follicles and sinking into my scalp. I was confused and stunned and very disgusted. But this being me after all, I am sure a part of my brain thoroughly saw this coming the moment I had admired my hair a little too much that morning. I had to get it out now. I started rummaging through my backpack for a cloth I could use to wipe the shit off, right there on the side of the road. but all I could find was an old discarded ATM receipt. Just as I was about to put paper to hair, I sensed someone staring at me. I turned around to find a young street urchin standing a few feet away, observing my strange antics with a smile on her face. I would estimate her age to be about 14. She was incredibly filthy. A layer of dirt and soot covered her hair and face. Her clothes looked like they hadn't been washed in months, and her hair was a bunch of dusty black clumps. But her face. I wouldn't exaggerate an ounce if I said that she had the face of an angel. I smiled back at her. She beckoned me, a gesture I interpreted to indicate that she wanted to help. With a miserable, defeated look of desperation, I took a step towards her. She came over, still smiling, and started examining my crown of bird poop with much interest. "Tumhara naam kya hai? What's your name?" I asked her in Hindi, as she located the exact spot the crow had hit me. She stopped staring at my head for a moment and replied with a series of half-formed sounds. It was but babble. At least, it wasn't a reply that was intelligible to me. She was talking to me, but I think she was dead. She then gestured to me to lower my head and turn it to the side. I did as she commanded, and she quietly proceeded to bunch her raggedy dupatta together and then used it to vigorously clean the bird shit off my head. And she scrubbed hard and thoroughly, taking a few hairs off in the process, but otherwise doing the most efficient cleaning job possible. She stopped after a while to inspect her handiwork. She furrowed her brow and found some fault with it and commanded me in her babble to stay still so she could finish her job. Few more tugs and a few more ripped hairs later, she finally nodded her approval at having done a thorough job. My head was now clean. To be honest, this random act of kindness perplexed me. In this big, bad, complex, confused city, full of people living in squalid conditions, I had just been rescued by someone who probably needed more rescuing than me. I didn't know how to react. I didn't know what I could do for her. And so, I did what the wealthy and the conceited amongst us do when we don't know how to deal with human kindness. I dug in my wallet and I fished out a 50 rupee note. I put the 50 rupees in her hand, and then I took her hands in both of mine and said, "Thank you." She stood there, very still. She looked shocked by my gesture. Perhaps no one had showed her the kindness that she herself had been so willing to give away, asking for nothing. Had people on the streets of Bombay walked away from her all too often because of her dirty clothes and her soot-covered face? Or worse, had they looked right through her, as if she wasn't even there, something we're all guilty of at times. She motioned to give me my money back. I refused, and instead I covered her hands with mine again. "Rakho, keep it," I said, in my firmest tone. "Ab main ja rahi hoon. I'm going now. Thank you." I bent down, pulled her towards me, and hugged her, and stepped back to take a mental photo. My act of redemption, perhaps. And then I received the most beautiful smile I had ever seen in my life, as a man with an apple cart shuffled by and 2 crows disappeared into the horizon of the Bombay morning. Thank you.